become a corporation in the state of Minnesota, you would file a document. It's called the Articles of Incorporation with the Secretary of State's office. And you can either do it in writing or you can file that document online. If you go to their website, they've got actually the form that you can complete online and file. And they really only ask you 4 questions. They ask you the name of the corporation, they ask the address, they ask for the name of the principal person involved in the corporation and the board of directors. So you can't get easier than that. In fact, each state has their own laws for incorporating a business, and they compete against each other essentially to make it as easy as possible, because each state wants as many people as possible to file in their state. And so over the years, it's developed where it's a very simple, streamlined procedure to incorporate in any business. The filing fee for becoming a corporation is $185 in the state of Minnesota when you file online. The other advantage of becoming a corporation is that it gives you some liability protection. Actually, what happens is a corporation acts as a separate entity. So this would be the corporation, and this would be the individual owner. And the corporation then would be the entity that's doing the business. And the individual owner kind of is it's separated from the corporate shell, which essentially means that if the business has debts that it can't pay, or falls into difficult situations, or incurs liability, the creditors will be able to go after the corporation shell, thus insulating the individual from liability. And there are a couple exceptions to that, which we'll talk about later. But that's the general idea, and that's why many people favor the corporation as the business model, especially since it's relatively easy and inexpensive to set up a corporation. Things you need to watch out for when you set up a corporation is your name. Your name needs to be unique. That's why we file it with the Secretary of State's office, because if there's someone else using your corporate name, then you'll have to choose another name. And it's public. The information from the Secretary of State's offices are public, so if they want to know about your corporation, they can find out your address and the names of the people behind it and other information about your corporation. So, some of the negatives with a corporation, historically one of the negatives has been taxes. Because essentially, since the corporation is a separate entity, in the old days, a corporation would pay income tax on its income. And so you would file a tax return for the corporation. Then, when the owner wants to get the income out of the corporation, he or she would take it out in the form of dividends or salary. Well, when they did that, of course, that meant they would be taxed on the money that they took out of the corporation. So what happened is, the owners were being taxed twice. Once, when the corporation files a return and reports its income, and then the second time when the owner takes out income in the form of dividends or salary. Well, who wants to be taxed on income twice? So over the years, kind of an alternative evolved, which was called the Subchapter S Corporation. And essentially the Subchapter S Corporation, you would file the corporation in your state, like in any other case. It would give you the same liability protection. But the difference was you would file a quick notice with the IRS for a Subchapter S status. And what that means is that the corporation would then be a pass-through entity. It would not pay tax on its own. So essentially, just the owner would pay tax directly. And usually that would be in the owner's personal income tax 1040 form and their Schedule C, which is where they would reflect their income or share of the income. And that works very well. So the goal then of the corporation, or essentially the Subchapter S Corporation, was to give everybody the best of both worlds. You have the liability protection of a corporation, but you also have the benefits of the income tax, which is to not be billed twice and have the pass-through characteristics to minimize the income tax that a person has to pay.